This is episode 6 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview-style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. I'd like to welcome Allison Maytag as our guest today. Allison is a Wisconsin native and is a second-year MPH student at the Colorado School of Public Health, concentrating in global community and behavioral health. She also works as the Chief Operating Officer of CU Peru, a student-run nonprofit organization dedicated to educating and empowering community health workers in the Peruvian Amazon. Most recently, she's been working on a project with CU Peru to expand access to mobile technology for health communication. When she's not studying, she can be found somewhere in or on the Rocky Mountains or swing dancing in downtown Denver. Welcome, Allison. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Katrina. This is great.
Yeah, I'd love to know, to kind of kick this off, I'd love to know, as a student, how did you get involved in CU Peru?
Yeah, so CU Peru is actually a student-run nonprofit run by students from the Anschutz Medical Campus. And I actually found them before I applied to Colorado for the Colorado School of Public Health.
Okay.
And they were actually the ones that kind of made my decision to move out to Colorado. I just really loved the work that they were doing. They're using a train-the-trainer model for facilitating education for community health agents in the Peruvian Amazon. And I just wanted to be involved in something that was sustainable and something that I could really use to further my career.
How cool is that? Because so often we hear, yes, I got this degree, but I don't have the tactical hands-on experience. Like, that's really cool that they have that program, that nonprofit.
Yeah, and it's so awesome because I've been able to walk out of every single one of my classes and just take what I've learned in the classroom directly to CU Peru.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with CU Peru, is everyone a student? So it's student-led, but is everyone a student?
Yeah, so we just brought on our first non-student volunteer.
Okay.
But for the most part, like, everybody on leadership is a student. Almost everybody within the organization is a student. And we cover all of the disciplines from the Anschutz Medical Campus, including medicine, nursing, dentistry, pharmacy, public health, physician assistant, and nursing practitioner.
Wow. Is CU Peru, Peru is in the name, obviously. Yeah. Are you working solely in Peru, or are there plans to expand beyond that?
Yeah, so right now our main focus is in Peru. We're trying to develop a model that's both functional and self-sustaining. Before we move on to another area. So in the next, maybe 10 to 20 years, we might be looking to move into different areas or to expand into sort of a CU Ecuador or CU some other place.
Got it. Right.
But we want to just make sure that we've really got this model down before we move on.
How do you balance that? How do you balance being a student and then also running this nonprofit that is truly changing the lives of so many people?
That's a great question. Sometimes not very well. But I don't know, it's just, with it being such a public health motivated intervention, it is really easy for me to balance it because, like I said, I'm able to take everything from my classes and just apply it directly to CU Peru and actually take stuff from CU Peru and bring it back into the classroom to work on it and get feedback from my peers and my professors.
So for those listeners who don't know that much about CU Peru, if this is their first experience, kind of tell everyone what you're doing on the technology front and why that's such a problem. Because I think, most if not all of us are in the US, and I think this is one of those issues that we don't think about on a day-to-day basis, but it's one that has such an impact on the lives of these people in these villages. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we originally started working with these community health agents in large group training, doing education, and making sure that they felt equipped to take care of the patients in their communities. They're responsible for triaging the patients and sort of knowing not necessarily what a particular diagnosis is, but knowing when a condition is bad enough that a patient needs to make the travel to a health post, which is the primary care facility in the jungle. And so we've been working on educating them, and we really want to make sure that we're empowering them as well to engage with their health system. And right now, all of the communication that they do with the health system and their health posts, their different health facilities, is in person. And the nearest health post may be a couple hours away by a motorized canoe. So we were looking for ways to facilitate their engagement with the healthcare system, and we decided to pilot a project using communication with cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
Mobile penetration in the Laredo region where we work is about 41%. So there are a number of people that have cell phones and have access to a cellular network.
And when you say mobile penetration, you're talking about like what we would call old flip phones, not smartphones with internet, right?
More or less dumb phones.
Yeah, so you can make phone calls and you can send just a regular old text message.
Yeah, and that's largely due to two things. One is the upfront cost of a smartphone is maybe out of the reach of a lot of our target communities. Mm-hmm. And that's also limited by the network that's actually in the area. They're only able to have a 2G network, so just the amount of data that you can send over that network is very limited.
Okay. So, and then the other challenge, and I'll just, full disclosure, I'll share a little bit of how I know so much of this is we were involved in a poverty hackathon put on by the Posner Institute. And so I have a lot of backstory going into this. And I know one of the biggest things is it may not sound like that big of an issue for these people to travel 2 hours by motorized canoe to get health care. But one of the challenges is oftentimes the person at that post is not there due to a vacation or out of hours or days off or something like that. And the other challenge that, oh my gosh, it took me, we were probably like 36 hours into this hackathon when our team realized that these are people that are living on approximately $2 a day. So to spend those gallons of gas to get to the health post and then also to get back and to be taking a day off work from fishing or farming, that's a huge economic impact on that person, on their family, and on the village. And so, I thought I would mention that piece too. So as a result of this hackathon, tell us how things are getting implemented, because texting through their mobile flip phones is a big part of what's happening here.
Yeah, so in advance of the poverty hack, I actually went down and pilot tested the system for 30 days, which then informed sort of the information that we brought to the poverty hack. And so we've been working with a lot of that information to design and program a text message system with a little bit more robust capabilities. So we have capabilities for auto forwarding to get the agents in contact with the closest healthcare provider for questions, for emergency situations, et cetera. We also have the ability to do back-end support and data collection, so we can actually monitor what the agents and the technicians are talking about and collect data on like disease surveillance or making sure that we're meeting their actual needs, and use that to inform future iterations of the system. We also have the capacity for auto reply and text message blasts, and just making sure that people get information that they need as quickly as possible without having to travel distance.
So I want to know, as a student and as the leader of CU Peru, do you feel like an entrepreneur?
Yes. Yeah. I didn't really realize that that's what I was feeling like, but after getting involved.
That's okay. That probably wasn't the intent, but you're doing it.
Yeah. No, the first time was actually Lizelle Van Buren told me, hey, you're an entrepreneur, right? And I went, oh, is that what I am?
Oh, that's fun.
I didn't know that that's what I was feeling like, but after getting involved in the startup community around Denver, it's just been a lot of like the really necessary mentorship that I'm looking for. So
I was actually just on a call with another woman, and she has a company called BeVisible.soy, and it's basically helping the Latina community and bridging the gap and giving Latinas more opportunity. And I asked her how she got started, and she's like, it was just something that weighed on my heart for, 20 whatever years. And so it wasn't ever like a conscious choice, like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and do this. It was just years and years of decision making that got her closer to that. And so I think it's so interesting that, you know, you can say you fell into it or whatever, but just by the nature of you being in public health, like, this is what you're meant to do and wanting to do, you know? Yeah. So that's interesting. What about, okay, so about that being an entrepreneur. So we've identified, we agree, you're an entrepreneur, whether you want to be or not. But what's your favorite part about that?
Oh, just sort of the freedom to be able to do what I feel is necessary. And like you said, like, it's just something that weighs on your heart. Like, there's a need and you have the ability to meet that need. Yeah. And being an entrepreneur kind of gives you the freedom to be able to meet that in the way that you feel is the best.
Have you seen any of those entrepreneur charts? They're the ones that like start out, you know, I'm having a great day, and then an hour later it tanks, like, I suck and everything I do doesn't work. And then an hour later, you're like, this is awesome. And then the next hour, I'm bankrupt, you know, and it's just like a roller coaster. I'm wondering, because what you're doing is like on the positive end is making such an impact and changing these people's lives for the better. I'm wondering how you deal with that roller coaster piece and how you recover from a tough day when you're like, shoot, that's not going to work, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and because like the system has the potential to have such an impact on health, and all these interventions that we're doing actually have the potential to affect lives. It's maybe even that those extremes are a little bit more extreme.
Right, right.
So yeah, so I definitely had some rough patches especially in Peru, just like feeling like I was never going to be able to be good enough, but just taking a step back and realizing that like every little step counts as progress, even if it's a step backwards, like you can still learn something from it. Mm-hmm. So just being very focused on the end and how the process is moving you towards that end, even when it doesn't feel like that, is really helpful.
You really hit on something good there, because I think especially for newbie entrepreneurs, they often have a lot of doubts, and the doubts don't really come from the technical side of things. Like, do I have the skill set to do this? It's more on the ego side and that personal feeling side of, am I good enough to make an impact? Can I make an impact? How long can I sustain this? And, you know, recognizing those little steps along the way, I think, is what successful entrepreneurs tend to do. You know, they say every 10,000 mile journey starts with a single step, and that's how you get there. What do you think, and maybe we're too early in this for me to ask this question, but what do you think is a rookie mistake you made? Like, what can you share with us so listeners kind of learn from it?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, so I think the biggest mistake I made was moving too fast. Like, we're just, with the way that CU Peru works, we're only down there twice a year. And so trying to maximize the time that we have can be kind of a challenge. And with something like this, like, you want to make sure that you're talking to your target audience, that you're really making sure that you're meeting their needs and not sort of imposing your own perspectives on the problem. So I think just remembering to take a step back and really, like, it doesn't matter necessarily when we roll the system out if it's not designed to meet their needs.
Right.
So just making sure that, like, so we've decided to postpone our rollout a little bit to do more interviews with the target communities that we want to talk to, and do more focus groups and alpha testing and beta testing, and really make sure that we're doing the process in the way that it's meant to be, instead of taking.
That is such a good tip, because you're working with a different culture in a different country, but I think that applies to anyone who's starting any type of company, is understanding your target market. And too often we place our own thoughts on what they must feel like in this scenario, and they may not feel like that at all. And so if we're making assumptions and if we're putting our lens on what they must feel like, then our message may be off, and then you're not going to get the conversions and the adaptations that you're looking for.
Right.
So that's really valuable. In organizations, in an organization like this, do you feel like being a woman gives you an advantage? And the reason I ask that is because, so recently I've been reading more about VC firms and what they're investing in. And what we see is, I'll just read you something. This is from, this is according to the Kauffman Foundation. And they say women-led private technology companies are more capital efficient, achieving 35% higher return on investment when venture-backed, bringing in 12% higher revenue than male-owned tech companies. And because this is really a technology solution for this community. And so there's just been so much debate and discussion around this topic right now of why is it that women-led companies receive such little investment in spite of them outperforming their male counterparts. Any insight on that?
Yeah, so we're just in the middle of sort of courting our investors right now. But I definitely feel like it's maybe gotten us a little bit more attention, having this technology company not only run by a woman, but also by a student.
Interesting, yeah.
So it's just been, so that's been really interesting. And I think also it's just been really empowering to me to be a role model for other women in my field or women of my age, to sort of show them like this is something that you can do, and that's a really humbling place to be as well.
Right. The place where you're inspiring other women to take a similar path. That's incredible.
Yeah.
What do you think, like a year from now, what do you think we'll be talking about as far as what trends are on the horizon? Like, what are you kind of keeping an eye out for? And what do you think, conversation will be in a year?
With regards to women in entrepreneurship?
Women in entrepreneurship or women in tech?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so hopefully we'll be talking a lot more about the equality.
Right. Hopefully.
Yeah. But I think we'll hopefully just have a lot more insight into how women really do empower companies, and how they and how companies can really engage them, and how investors can engage women-led companies as well.
Yeah. That would be good. So as we wrap up, I just want to read this quote from Brené Brown. I think she is brilliant in her research and what she's doing in the entrepreneurial community. And this is an excerpt from one of her books. And it says, daring greatly means the courage to be vulnerable. It means to show up and be seen, to ask for what you need, to talk about how you're feeling, and to have hard conversations. And when I think of what you're doing in a different culture, in a different country, with issues so personal, it's a medical issue. What can you share about showing up and being vulnerable to other people who are listening?
Yeah, so ultimately, what it all boils down to is relationships, and really engaging on a human level with whoever your target audience is. And so vulnerability is such a key component of that. I think that's one of the things that I struggle most with personally. But it's such an act of courage to show up and be vulnerable and be human. And it sort of serves as an entry point for other people to engage with you.
Right. And when people realize that you really are listening and you're being vulnerable and authentic, I think that helps break some of those barriers, because you're not just trying to impart your Western thinking or your Western plans on other people. Like, you really are coming from the place of, I'd love to help and we have these resources. We just kind of have to work together and think it through to make it work for everyone.
Right. And coming from that place of true vulnerability and true openness really helps you put aside your own perspectives.
Right. That's really awesome. Well, I love ending on that note. Allison, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Katrina. It was great to talk with
Oh,
you.
you're welcome.